Hi, everyone. My name is Kai Armstrong. I'm the product manager for the editor group in the create stage of the DevOps lifecycle here at GitLab. And I wanted to talk about the upcoming 13.1 release for GitLab and what the editor group has planned. And so I'm going to share my screen. We'll get into some things. First, I wanted to start with a couple things that I'm really excited about that are coming out in 13.0. So 13.0, we're releasing the dark theme for the web IDE. So you can see this here. If you're on gitlab.com and you've already set your syntax highlighting preference to dark, you'll already be using this. So I'm really excited about this and all the work the team did to get this across the line. Take advantage of that once you're on the 13.0 release. The other one I wanted to highlight out of 13.0 is version snippets. So this has been, if you remember all these other kickoff videos, I've been talking about version snippets and how we're almost there. It is here and it is launching in 13.0. And so in 13.0, you'll be able to clone a snippet and they'll be backed by Git repository, so they'll have version control. So we're really excited about that. And that'll bring us into 13.1 and what we're going to talk about here. And so in 13.1, the momentum is continuing with snippets. We're now going to start working on introducing multiple file support for snippets. And so snippets are really valuable in sharing pieces of content, but they sort of have an issue when you've got to share maybe a script and then the log file that script outputs, or maybe you're trying to share some HTML and CSS or JavaScript with another user. And because our snippets are limited to one file, those things don't work. And so what we'll be starting on in 13.1 is a lot of the backend work that's going to be required to bring in multiple files, and then we'll start working on the UI components to introduce this. What I've got up on the screen here is the epic, so you can start to see what that looks like. And so if we take a look at some of these screenshots, in a list of files, you'll notice, you'll now see that there's multiple files if there's more than one, or we'll show the file name for if there's only a single file. Sort of an initial state of what the editing screen looks like. It'll look very similar to what it does today, but we'll be adding in a button to add another file. And when you add these additional files, ultimately you'll be able to scroll up and you could have up to 10 files in here. So this is what 10 files in a snippet would look like for now. And then, no longer able to add any, but you'll be able to create those snippets. And so we're really excited about getting started on this work. I don't have an ETA yet of when we think this will ship, but we did a lot of the legwork up front when we were working on version snippets. And so hopefully we'll be able to iterate through this pretty quickly and deliver on multiple files and snippets. The other snippet-based area that I want to talk about is permissions. So we've had a lot of really good feedback around permissions and snippets and how particularly snippets and projects are hard for members of that project group to collaborate on and work on, right? The permissions model is currently locked where only one user is able to edit and make changes to that snippet, and that's the original author. And so we're going to start doing some investigations into changing that permission model and what the broader impacts might be. Right now, the plan is to adjust snippets inside of projects to just follow the project access permission. So if you have developers who are able to push code in a project, then developers in a project would be able to push to that snippet. And there's some considerations we'll need to make about, well, what if we don't want that to happen? But we think this is the first right step in normalizing these permissions and how we might do that. So if you've got feedback on what you'd like to see there, I'll make sure this issue's down below in the comments, and you can take a look at that and provide some feedback there. Moving on to editing, and specifically inside the web IDE, we're going to take on an issue to support an editor config file for the web IDE. So editor config is a standard that helps with coding style and file formatting for specific things that you might define in there. So you might define tabs or spaces, or how many, the tab width, or how many spaces you use, and those types of things. And so we're going to make the web IDE, if you have an editor config file defined in your repository, we'll support that when you open that project in the web IDE, and we'll apply some of those rules to your files in there. And so we've outlined here in terms of what styles or what rules we'll enforce, what we're able to do in terms of tab width and white space and size and style of indents. So we're going to work on delivering this in 13.1. The initial implementation will only work in the web IDE. It'll be only if you've got an editor config file defined in your repository, and then we'll look at expanding this functionality sort of further out into maybe our single file editing experiences, and also giving sort of other parts of GitLab a way to build on this. But this is what we're starting with in 13.1. So really excited to bring this. I think this is a great step forward for teams really trying to be consistent about how they're writing their code and what those files look like. And so, we're excited to bring that to you. Last one I want to touch on here is sort of our editors that we've got. And this is a little bit of backend technology, but our web IDE is based on an open source project called Monaco. It is the foundation of the editor for VS Code and a lot of other online IDEs that you might use. So Monaco is what we use there. Our single file editor, so if you go into a repository and you click the edit button and you don't load the full web IDE, it's based on a product called ACE. We're working to standardize on Monaco for all of our editing. And that gets us a lot of advantages in maintainability and other things. But as a user, what that gets you is the experiences that you have, for things like editor config that we're working on, or all of the syntax highlighting preferences that we've just introduced in previous releases. All of those things will be standard in sort of all the editing experiences in GitLab. And so that's really what we want people to have. When you go to edit a piece of code inside of GitLab, we want that to be the same no matter how you're doing it. That way all the tools and functionality that you have in one are not different in the other. And so with the launch of Snippets, version Snippets in 13.0, we replaced that editor. That was the first place we changed the editor out for ACE to Monaco, and we will highlight some of that in the release post coming up in 13 about some of the benefits that you're getting there. What we'll be working on in 13.1 is replacing that in the single file editor. And so I'll just quickly open up a project here. And when I say single file editor, what I'm talking about is if I see this file here and we click edit, this is a different editor, the actual kind of text area where I'm editing code, than if I were to go back to this project. Let's do this and open this in the full-blown web IDE, and you can see the dark web IDE here. We'll open the file back up. But so what we're going to do is we're going to standardize these things so that I would have had a similar editing experience if I clicked edit. It would have been dark because my preference is set to that. It would have been highlighted much more like this than the other syntax highlighting preferences that were there, and then those other style things that we've talked about with editor config and other support that we have in Monaco. So that's what's coming in 13.1. I'll make sure there are links to all of these things down below the video. If you have any feedback on those, please feel free to leave comments. We're really excited about all of it and looking forward to another great release.